Hello, Bohemian 3 here from the DAS community. Now since we've created our slopers, now the real fun begins. Here's an overview of a number of the techniques I will be covering to discuss how you will bring your patterns to life from your slopers. If you're interested in designing clothing for female DAS characters, you might want to check out Helen Joseph Armstrong's book, Pattern Making for Fashion Design. She has an excellent chapter on dart manipulation and how you create the various styles for women's clothing. Here's a Victorian 9 sloper I created. You can use the link below to download it. Based on the guidelines I gleaned from the book, I'm going to make some cuts and recombine this sloper into a princess style. So I'm going to hit the G key for the internal line. You'll be spending a lot of time with these tools, so you'll want to become familiar with them. And I'm holding down the Shift key to constrain the line. Then I'm going to cut and sew, clicking right in the 2D pattern window. Now I'm going to move my dart. So again, using the G key, I'm creating an internal line, and then I'm going to cut and sew. Before I continue, I want to draw your attention to an important feature in the 3D window. Shift S hides and shows the 3D seam lines that are being created. So when I'm working in this mode, I normally keep that on so that I can see what I'm doing. So returning back to the 2D pattern window. So in the 2D pattern window, I'm going to hit the B key, which is Show Sewing. The B key, which is Edit Sewing. And then I'm going to merge these two together. And that's how you move darts. So now we have the two primary pieces of the princess line. I'm going to simulate really quick. And then you can begin your process of shaping. A common shape when creating a princess line is to have a more curved silhouette along the side. So I'm going to use the Smooth Curve tool and smooth this curve out, and then hit Simulate again. And it'll take a little work to get it to lay exactly flat the way you want in your pattern, but this is the basic concept of cutting and moving darts around for creating patterns. Moving forward, this is the cycle you will be using over and over again to create your patterns. Here's my Michael 8 sloper. What I want to do is demonstrate the same principles when creating historical garments. So I'm going to add a background image, a men's Victorian jacket pattern. And using the same principles as before, we're not going to in any way, shape, or form try to trace this, but we're going to try to recreate it using our existing sloper. The interesting thing about this pattern is how the front and the side is combined. So we're going to do that now. So here's my back piece, which matches this back over here. What I'm going to do is copy the shape. Now, right now my sloper only comes up to the waistline, so I'm only going to copy up until this area here and add the additional volume later. So I'm going to start halfway down the armhole of the back, and using an internal line, I'm going to create a line and then cut and sew that line. So now we have this line along the back, and what I'm going to do is this new pattern piece, I'm going to hit B and I'm going to combine it and I'm going to merge it with the front piece. So now we're getting a shape that's beginning to look like that jacket. And right now, it may not seem like a big deal moving these seam lines around, but as you begin adding detail and shaping, it makes a huge difference. So for example, now we're going to start shaping this back piece, and we're going to start getting a silhouette that's more representative of a Victorian gentleman's jacket. You'll want to constantly use references when you create these patterns. One last note, remember, generally speaking, if there's any lining in the pattern, you don't ever really need to worry about it. We'll talk about how to handle situations for lining later on in a 3D model. Now I'm going to delete this point. And shape this pattern piece a little, and then move this pattern piece in to begin getting more of the shape that we're used to seeing in a Victorian jacket or a uniform. So you'll continue this procedure until you're done with your pattern. We're going to use the same concept for shaping sleeves. For example, sweatshirts often have what's called a Raglan sleeve. And what's nice about this book right here, Pattern Making for Menswear, is it actually takes you through each step that you need to take in order to create the pattern. So it takes you from the sloper and moves you through. So what we're going to be doing is doing what is suggested here. We're going to be making these cuts and then combining them in Marvelous Designer. So I'm going to use my internal polygon line G, and I'm going to cut the top part of the Raglan sleeve. Same on the back. So now we have the top part of the Raglan sleeve, and what I'm going to do is merge those two pattern pieces together. And so you can see this a little better. I'm going to create a new fabric and assign it to the sleeve. And right now, eventually we'll need to go back, and eventually you'll want to go back and fix the shaping of this collar. And you could decide right now, well, you know, that's close enough, that's what I wanted. If I hide my seam lines, I get more or less the effect I want, but you're still going to want to merge these top Raglan pieces with your actual sleeve, because remember, behind the scenes, Marvelous Designer is creating geometry based on your seam lines. And what we don't want when we go do our final simulation is we don't want additional geometry here on the sleeve. We want it to be all one piece. So what you're going to do is work on combining these pattern pieces, these sleeves. This time it's not so easy to merge these. Marvelous Designer is going to tell you they can't be merged because of overlapping points. What we're going to need to do is shape these pieces. So to handle this, I'm going to delete this point right here. And there's multiple strategies for doing this, but I'm going to match up these points here. Delete this point, and now I can merge these two pieces. If you notice now, we're actually getting a nice effect here. We're beginning to get the wrinkles and the ripples where we want them. This still needs shaping, but I wanted to show you the overall strategy for how you create sleeves using your existing sloper. One last example of converting sleeves from a sloper into a real pattern comes from the Kershaw book, Pattern Making for Menswear. The process of making a well-fitted suit for a man has a long tradition, and it's not easy. This book walks you through all the steps that are involved with it, and there are a lot. But I want to look at one area specifically, which is creating the sleeves. Suits, uniforms, and top coats traditionally have a two-piece sleeve for shaping. So let's see how we do that in Marvelous Designer. I'm going to add a background image. So a men's suit traditionally has this two-piece, so to derive that from the sloper, you can use another tool, which is the 3D pattern line, not the avatar, which we've been using a lot, but the actual 3D line pattern. And this allows you to draw lines on an existing pattern. And what we want to do is identify where the undersleeve will go for the two-piece suit. So if you notice, we get this line in the 2D pattern window, and now I'm going to go to the front and do the same. So now I'm going to edit the line, click right, and trace as an internal shape. And I'm going to do the same thing with the back line. And that will create lines for us to cut on our 2D pattern. So I'm going to delete those lines we created in the 3D window so they don't cause confusion. And these lines in the 2D window, I'm going to make sure they reach the pattern outline. And then I'm going to cut and sew. So after that's done, we're going to combine these two pieces right here together. This is the undersleeve, and we're going to merge them. And then we're going to shape those pieces. I'm not going to do it here, but slowly you're going to work to shape these pieces so that you will want to spend a lot of time getting your pattern to match the shape of the reference background image. It's worth the time to give the suit sleeve the cut and draping of a real suit. In another video, we'll discuss advanced topics like shoulder padding. I spent about 6 to 8 hours building out this final pattern. In the next video, we'll take you through a complete project, start to finish, for a simple sleeveless shirt, showing you everything from going from the sloper to applying materials and rendering in DAZ.